All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining, everyone. Just quick introductions. My name is Bryan Hadzik here with NCSI.
I'm Bryan Hoskins.
And today we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff from Ivanti, specifically our service management platform. So we're very excited to kind of bring it to you and walk you through what it looks like in the inside the service management platform. For those that joined us last week, we talked about asset management. This is built on kind of the same platform, our enterprise service management platform. But today we're going to be focusing on service management. So
yeah, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So to kind of set the stage for today and what we're going to be talking through is, again, we're on the enterprise service management platform that's here, but we're going to be focusing today around all of the service management structure that's here. So we're going to be going through and we're going to start with our self-service. So we're going to be looking at self-service, opening up an incident through email, a couple of other mechanisms as well, going through the service catalog, potentially even requesting assets, which does require that asset management if we're going to do the asset catalog, but it doesn't require it for all of the different types of asset requests that you could do. Look through chat, way to open incidents from chat, look through way to open incidents through voice calls and an automated system along those lines. And then moving in from an incident request problem, look at some knowledge, quickly look at change, CMDB, and release along those lines. Also talk about the concept of a triage level incident or record where we don't know what it is that we're actually looking at as we're going through along this line. So we don't know if it's an incident or a request that's coming in. Through any of the different mechanisms we have, we can bring in that triage record and then have it converted over to an incident or a request along those lines. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're going to start in the self-service side. And so I'm going to turn that over to Bryan Hadzik, and he's going to walk us through some of that.
All right, so I'm going to be playing the part of a user today. You're going to see things from the user's perspective when I am demonstrating it. Let's open up some incidents. Let's work it from a user's perspective. So I'm going to open a bunch of requests and incidents and so forth. And then we're going to pass it over to Bryan Hoskins to do the analyst side. He's going to receive those incidents and try and go through and work with them. So first of all, you can see here, this is our self-service portal. Now, you can brand this however you want to and change the colors and change the logos and fonts and kind of everything that you want. This is just kind of our example scenario. We have a fake company called Vertrillo that we use to demonstrate. So you're going to hear and see kind of some information from that. That's just our sample company to test this out. Some cool things we have up here at the top. I'm making some announcements. You know, maybe there's a problem or an issue and I want to announce something to my end users. You can see it can cycle through there. Here I have some popular requests. I could open up an incident here. We're going to open up the service catalog. We're going to do that here in a little bit. Down at the bottom, you can see my news and announcement, maybe common knowledge-based articles, and then my open incidents. All these are customizable. You can change these or brand these however you want to adapt to your particular use cases. Up here at the top, we have some cool things like a search. So if I go through here and search for Outlook, it's going to be what's called an Omni Search. It searches kind of everything. Users don't know what self-service really means, or a knowledge-based article versus an incident versus a request. So let's not force them to have to know those kinds of things. I'm searching, and look, I'm searching through frequently asked questions or a Q&A or different announcements. We can look at multiple different things. But we've made a knowledge-based article. In this case, we branded it as a frequently asked question because they may know what that means. So maybe I want to know how to open up to create a personal folder with Outlook. Or, if I want to go back over here, I can look at other things on how to connect to a projector or add a network printer or various things like that. So this gives us the ability for the user to very easily find the things that we're looking for. So if I come down here to this particular article, you can see we can do things like rating them. I can let the user rate them on a star system. Down here at the bottom, they could say whether it was helpful. They could add comments. Most of our things are customizable. You're just going to see what's out of the box, what it kind of looks like right when we first turn it on. If you want to disable comments or things like that, that's great. We can go ahead and do that for you. Here back in my knowledge base, I have other things like being able to actually open something up. I can click on this button right here, and it's going to open up the Windows function to go and add a printer. Or maybe I want to have a more rich article where I'm going to have an embedded YouTube link. Now, you don't have to be an HTML programmer or anything like that to be able to add these. Pretty much just copy and paste, and then we're going to understand that, and we're going to render that. So now we can make those knowledge-based articles a lot more rich. And so that's how our knowledge base is going to work for our users. So let's go through and open up some incidents and make some requests. What's the most common way that people ask for help? It's, through email. So if we go over here, we can send an email into our mailbox that does support, and it's going to be created an incident. So I'm going to be a regular user here, right? I'm going to say very descriptive about my problem. It doesn't work. And I'm going to say the thingy doesn't work. So that's a typical user request, right? They're not particularly descriptive of it. So I'm going to send that on. That's going to be a problem for my analyst. He's going to have to worry about that here in a little bit. And so we can kind of see how that works. Otherwise, I could open up an incident, and I can do it right here through self-service. In my example here, I can do things like maybe I want to give you the ability to open on behalf of somebody else. It's not me, April, that's the user that I'm playing as here. I want to open off on, behalf of someone else, Bryan Hoskins, or if we typed it in right, it would automatically search through the catalog and show the people that we could open on behalf of, or, what is the category, what is the summary description, and things like that. So that's another way that I could open it. And then down here at the bottom, we can see that my incidents that are opened. So I just got an email back that is from my service desk telling me that the incident has been opened. Now I've customized this and branded this. This is past the out of the box. Put my logo up at the top and talked about the different features and gave them a button to open it via email or open it in web browser. They could just reply to it and kind of interact with me that way as well. But that's the confirmation that they got back that the incident has been opened. Down here at the bottom, they'd be able to open up and look at all of their incidents or requests that they've created, see the different status and so forth. So let's go through the catalog here and let's go and request a couple of different things. So I'm going to go and say, maybe I want something. I want a piece of hardware or something like that. So here I have a computer request from the product catalog. Again, up here at the top, it already knows who I am, and I can go through and say, well, I want a laptop and I want 5 of these assets or whatever. What's going to happen here is this is going to show me the product catalog. If you missed it, last week we talked about asset management. A product catalog is a standards catalog where we have standards for the organization. We don't just buy any laptop that we want. We have some standards. Now, I have a lot here in my standards catalog just to show that we have lots of different options. But maybe one of the things I want is this HP EliteBook Folio 1040 G2. Now, I don't have to show this to the end user. Maybe you don't want to give all those options. Maybe you want to restrict it down, or you do it based on their rights. A regular end user can't ask for hardware. Maybe you have to be a manager level and you can only ask for 1. But then when you're a director level, you can ask for 5 or whatever. All those rules you get to create and you get to control. This is just to kind of get you thinking about it now. So let's go back over here and just say, let's request one of those. Maybe down here at the bottom, you needed to say something special. I want it painted pink. Maybe you don't want to give your users the option to ask for anything special. You don't have to. So we use a shopping cart mentality where you can actually see the price over here on the side. Again, you can turn that off if you don't like it, but this is cool because maybe you want to have some logic kick in. If it's over a certain dollar amount, maybe you want to force an approval request. We've got to go and ask a manager if it's okay to move on or something like that. So I'm going to review and submit that. I'm going to submit that up to my shopping cart. And then I'm going to submit that shopping cart. And, again, Brian's going to have to go and deal with that. So, yep, we're going to go and submit that over there. So one of the important things is understanding that we're talking today about IT service management, IT service management, but we're built on an enterprise service management platform that extends past IT. So one of the use cases I want to talk about is things like, I want to expand this over to things like HR or facilities. Look at that. I just got an email confirmation that it received my request for the service request that I just made. So if I switch over here to HR, for example, I'm now presented with HR related functions on facilities. And if I want to go over here to an HR request, it's going to be things like, hiring a new employee. Now, you can customize this and brand this however you want to. You could have had them all shared in the same space. You could segregate IT and HR. You could have HR live by itself. You can implement only IT or only HR. We can customize it however that you want to. So here in my example, a new employee onboarding is a HR related request. So, I would go through here and say, I'm going to hire someone. I'm going to hire Larry Benson. What organizational unit is he going to be in? What team is he going to be on? What department is he in? He's going to be the chief financial officer. And I'm going to pick the start date. Today's the 17th. He starts tomorrow on the 18th. Well, I can't pick the 18th. Well, why can't I? This is an example of a field level constraint. We want to make sure that we control this process. A lot of this has to do with that process. We don't want anyone to just type in whatever they feel like here. We want to control it. In my example, you can't hire someone without 2 weeks notice. So we even tell them down here, minimum 2 weeks is required. What location are they going to be at? He's going to go to France. He's going to need an office. Does he need a computer? Yes, it does. It expands out, gives me more options. So lots of cool things that we can do here in these forms to work through that new employee onboarding process. And this is one of the most common ones that we do. A lot of customers want to start with this because they say, hey, our new employee setup is it's a mess. It just doesn't work well. People don't give good notice. And we don't have a good workflow. And think about all the things it touches. It touches facilities because they need a key card. It touches HR because they need to be added to payroll. It touches IT because we need an Active Directory account created. There's lots of pieces to that puzzle. So having a nice rigid workflow around that is important. So let's go ahead and submit that over to the cart and we'll see what that looks like on the other side. Okay, so a couple of last things. Let's talk about other ways that we can open up incidents if I'm a regular end user. So we have a chat. So right here, it's kind of behind me, but right there we have a chat with support. This is chatting with a human. So I talk to a human, say, you know, hey, I'm having a problem, and the human talks back to me, and we potentially go and solve a problem. But other ways, you know, customers still ask for, you know, interactions over things like voice or text message. And so we have examples of that. A lot of what we're talking about in the platform today is kind of just built into the base platform. There are a couple of cool add-ons on top of that. So this next thing I'm going to show you is an add-on that's our Omni-Channel communication platform that makes it so that I can call, I can text, I can chat. We talk to bots. We identify the user based on the caller ID. We present them with questions. So I'm even going to call in and it's going to say, hey, you already have an open incident. Do you want to talk to the same person that you talked to before? Or, you know, is there a bigger issue? So this is an example of what the Omni-Channel looks like. So again, Virtrillo is our fake company we're calling into.
Thank you for calling Virtrillo. Alan, I see you have an open issue. Are you calling about that?
No.
How can I help you today?
I can't print.
I see you're having a printer issue. Is the toner light on?
No.
I see you're having...
So that's an example of identifying who you are, asking what your issue is, being able to understand your issue. She understood that I was having a printer problem. Asking another question, you know, hey, our facilities department, for example, handles toner replacements. So let's send it over there. And doing a lot of cool things like, you know, queuing and skills-based routing and so forth. So that's a really cool option in the Omni-Channel, but that expands to things like being able to do that via text message. So, you know, maybe I want to enable my users to be able to text message with me. So, you know, here I have a user, they get out their cell phone, they don't want to log into an app or be near a computer or things like that. Maybe they come back and say things like, you know, my ERP is slow. We're going to recognize that they said the word ERP. We're actually checking the system and recognizing we have a major incident. We have a major incident that the ERP application has an outage. And look, it's saying, you know, there's a ping responses are slow. Are you having this particular problem? And I can say, well, yes, I'm having that problem. And it's going to go and create an incident for me and tie it to that major incident. That way, when the major incident's resolved, it pushes back out to me that has been solved. So really cool that we can deflect some of that without having to get an actual agent on the phone. Maybe if I wanted to have an agent on the phone, I could have had them. You know, if I would have said no, we would have went through and you would have seen that. We really don't have time to kind of go through all of those functions, but then the agent could actually be text messaging with me, even though they're just on a computer. So that was a quick run through of what things look like from a user's perspective. I'm going to pass it over to Bryan Hoskins, and he's going to receive a lot of these requests and show you what everything looks like from an analyst perspective.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So what we want to do is quickly start, and I'm going to actually continue the self-service just a second as we come over here, because some of these requests that come in, I may have to be a manager and approve those. And that's done in our self-service. Very important to understand. No extra licensing for the approval structures or any of those kind of things. So you can come in here and I can see, here's all of the different components that I have. If I want to go ahead and filter and just say, hey, just show me those things that are approvals. And I can come in here and see I have an approval pending, right, for a new on board. And I can come through from this kind of perspective and approve that onboarding request. And if I wanted to, I could put in some reason associated with that. But I've just gone through from that one and done an approval on that new employee onboarding request that was just submitted in there. So I've got lots of different options around that. We can go through and see if that hardware needed approval, for example, that could have sent it to me for an approval perspective. I think that one by default sends it to Alan Taylor, who I'll show you that here in just a minute along those lines. So we got a couple of different users logged in. So I've got myself logged in as administrator here. We're also going to play maybe more of an manager role as we look at this stuff. We've also got Dave Miller logged in over here. We'll switch over to Dave here in just a minute to be able to kind of walk through some of that. But if you see here from this perspective, first of all, when we log in, we're going to set a role, and everything that we do in this platform is going to be governed and controlled by our role. So you'll see here, as I'm logged in as this admin, I'm going to have access to all kinds of different options, including, API configuration. And I'm going to have this little wrench over here saying I can go to the admin portal to go through and do configuration, additional things along those lines. If I say switch my role over to be a service desk manager, you will notice that not only will my home dashboard change, right? All of my access will change to that as well based upon that selected role of a service desk manager. So now I'm looking at, announcements that are happening along this line. If we're having some different components, I can see my team's incidents breaching in the next 24 hours. I can see, my team's active incidents by owner. So if I needed to go down and say, who's got a heavy workload, maybe I could offload some of that to other team members. I can see items that are coming in that haven't been assigned to anybody as we're kind of working that through from that perspective, or, my team's active incidents by priority and additional dashboard components. If I wanted to come in and look at, what's my assigned work, I could quickly see that. Or, come in here and see that manager view or the analyst view and see all of the work that's assigned to that particular individual. Now, that's not all of the dashboards. That's just all the dashboards that they have favorited. If I were to come in here, here's all of the dashboards this person has that they could go through. Hey, let's just go in and start to see what are our surveys looking like. If I wanted to come in here and start to track what kind of feedback we're getting from our customers as we're supporting them and working them through this different process along those lines. Right? So let's actually go ahead for the next one and switch over here to Dave, right? And Dave's our analyst. You'll notice his view going to be far more set based upon, what is a technician view? What does my workload look like? What are the things that I need to get to and kind of work from that perspective? My work, my active incidents, my open tasks, my active service requests, I would be able to quickly look at that. Or if I wanted to, go to this service desk analyst one, hey, what are notes that I haven't read? This is very important, right? As users interact with us and we get them to respond to email and that updates the incident or the request, then we want to be able to see that we haven't read that note that user's applied to that. My tasks, my active incidents, all of those kind of things allow me to see, what actions do I need to take as an analyst from this kind of perspective. So now every one of the modules that we go into is going to follow the exact same look and feel within Ivanti. Everything's going to have a search up here along the top. We're going to have a preview and a results down here in the middle and a preview on the bottom. And we can move any one of these to say how big or small we want any one of these different components. It's also configurable into what we want to display. So if we wanted to add more fields into the preview window, we can do that. And you'll notice whatever it is that I have selected, that preview would allow it to go through and do that. Somebody has an error that's popped up, and I can see even the HTML text that's in that particular incident in this case. And if I select more than one, it will then show me, right, whatever that last one is that I have selected on there. And if I select more than one, I can start running actions against those, either from this menu here, or you'll notice this little more menu where I can get to things like, declare this a major incident or send out some notifications as part of this and predefined templates for emails that we wanted to send out. Any of those kind of things would be possible along those lines. So here you can see I have a quick search where I can go through and find, hey, show me only those that are my active incidents. and it would be able to go through and work from that perspective, or show me active VIP incidents, and I could work through there. You'll see as I go through and do this, I went into the edit, and you can see this is where the configuration of that particular search is. So it's looking for incidents where is VIP is yes, and the status is equal to active, right? Now you'd see all of the different saved searches that are here. Only those that are my favorites are listed here in this little drop-down list from that kind of perspective. Okay, so you'll also notice I have free text search right over here. So if I wanted to say, show me everything that Bryan has submitted, but I can't type my own name today, right? Show me everything that Bryan has submitted into the system. And then even maybe show me everything that Bryan had submitted that had email in there. And I would be able to quickly show any of those, kind of viewing that particular thing. And what if I wanted to say, show me anything that was also in a logged status, right? And I can go through and see, or had the word logged in there. There's more than one path that could be there. So lots of different options against that. Let's go ahead and clear those. You'll also see that I can filter on anything that's set on a column. So if I wanted to filter on customer, I could do that. If I wanted to filter on team, I could go through and do that along those lines. If I wanted to filter on source, quickly do that along those lines. But we have a quick filter list where we can come through here and see, here's all of our primary filters that we want to go through and do and say, hey, show me everything that's logged and active, that's a priority 3 or 4, that's assigned to my team, where the user is a VIP, and let's just even say the service that they're calling about is the desktop service, right? I got that all the way down to 2 records in this case, and I could go through and start to track additional things if I wanted to. You'll notice we have a breadcrumb trail up here along the top. I could remove any one of those things through that breadcrumb trail, or I could clear them all, and I could also save this as a saved search so that I could call it up later if I wanted to do that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create our incident here. We're going to go ahead and do a new incident. You will notice that there was a little, and let me go back to that really quickly. You'll notice there's a new with a little drop down there. If it's a new that I want to go through and select something from a template, I can quickly do that here along those lines. But I can also apply a template at any time in the future by just selecting that template from the drop down list on here. Okay, so let's go ahead and say that Marcia is calling in this case. Notice we'll find some key pieces of information about Marcia within here. We could have more information if we wanted to, department or manager, any of those kind of things. But you'll notice I can also go to that full employee record, and that would allow me to see all of the additional details, including incident history. And I forget that is a restricted part on that one. So let me show it this way. We can see it here, right? We can see that everything from Marcia with all those different pieces along those lines. I can see that's going to come from Marcia and her full record and all that kind of information. And it did restrict me as an analyst, my service desk analyst role, from being able to see that full record. That's a permission that you can do. Let's switch over and let me finish that over here as an analyst so that I can show you all of, or the admin, so I can show you all of the additional details from here. So we go into a new incident. Again, we'll just select Marcia. And then as I go through with appropriate permissions, I can go to her record and I can see all of the information. I can see her incident history. I can see her assets assigned to her along those lines. And that's a configuration that you guys can decide and choose if you wanted to do that and allow all the service desk analysts to see that kind of data. Or you could even populate that data over here on that service desk form if you wanted to see incident history or assets along those lines as well. So let's just say that Marcia's has a Windows profile error, and it is error 1408. And just, we got some kind of, maybe she sent a separate email to us, or maybe we know the error, but I'm just going to do a quick Google search for error message, right? And let's just grab some error message off of the web here, and we'll copy and paste that directly in here, right? So we'll copy that image, and you can see we've got a full HTML editor here that we can just paste that right in from this perspective. We can also edit that into more of a full screen mode. So if we've got to put a lot of notes in here, whatever that is, we can go through and do that from here. Now you'll notice a couple of things as I go through. I'm just going to set the service and category to service desk here, but we have a full service structure, a full category structure underneath that. And you'll notice it's going to assign it to me from here along those lines. I wanted to show you that first, because if I set it to service desk, it's going to leave it to me. But I could go through and set something to something else. Let's just say, for example, that this is the desktop service, right? Well, you'll notice as soon as it's desktop service, no longer should I be the one owning it. Maybe it's going to filter that down to only desktop support or something along those lines. Maybe it could automatically set it to desktop support. That's something that you guys could decide as part of your implementation for this platform. But let's go ahead and say, let's assign this to Chris as we go through. We could also link the asset. So we can come over here and say, show me where the owner is Marcia. Do that search, and that would only show me those things that are assets that are assigned to Marcia, where those structures are set associated with that, right? And we can go through and set any one of the different components from there and link any of those assets that we wanted to do from those. So if I wanted to grab, let's just grab one of these computers that are on here as well to be able to go through and see that from here. Now, you might have noticed as we were over and doing this search, we've got a summary, a description. It's gone out and searched that information in the knowledge base, in the problem management database, in the incident history, as well as active changes or implemented changes from this platform. So I can go through and start to see all of that kind of information. I can see if there's an active change that might be causing it. I could link this to that change so I can know that that has been generated by this. I could come in here and see from an incident perspective, hey, here's where this has happened in the past. And maybe we have some information against that particular thing that we could then go through and resolve that incident from the previous incident based upon that. Or we can see that maybe we've seen this in the past and it's a consistent thing. So we have a problem record around this, and we would be able to see, we can go through and look at this error. We can say, oh, to fix this, we have to install a patch, or we can uninstall Visio along those lines. So you've got several different things that could go, and I can say, resolve this via that resolution, resolve it via that workaround, or I can come in here from this perspective and even see, hey, here's a knowledge article that may be applicable to this. In this case, yes, that's exactly what we're having. Oops, sorry. Get that mouse in the right spot, and it will go through and let me scroll against that, see all of the detail in there. That will let me link out to other platforms, other things all along those lines. If I go ahead and say link and resolve, right? You can then go through and see from that link and resolve perspective, it's taken that knowledge article, it's attached that information here. If I go ahead and save that, the status is moved to resolved. And you'll see from that perspective, it will go through and also link in that knowledge article from here. So I can go through and see that right here as I'm looking at the details along those lines. So as we kind of work through, that's the first incident. We've also got that incident that April sent in. So if I wanted to do just a quick search, maybe I would look at all incidents and then let's just filter or sort by created on, right? So we would be able to see that it doesn't work here, and I can go through and grab that. The first thing that I would want to do along those lines is say, I'm going to go ahead and take ownership of that. So I'm going to essentially assign that to me. You'll notice it assigns it to me. It moves it to an active status. And from that perspective, we're able to go through and say, hey, we don't have enough information along these lines. So we can say, hey, we need to get more information from April. Maybe we can do that back here and say, let's go ahead and send, right, April an email and say, you know, can you give me more info? And that would then send that email over to April. We don't need to see that whole interaction at this point, but let's just say April responds, that updates, we fill out that data, any of that kind of stuff can all be done along those that process. You can also see from here, I can come up here to this status and say, hey, I'm going to put this on waiting on customer. And when I put that on waiting on customer, it's going to say, hey, let's get a follow-up date out along those lines. So hey, I make sure that this doesn't go out there for a week and it's going to remind me to follow up. Now the system's automatically going to continually remind April, right? But now I've also got a thing to follow up for me to follow up and make sure that it's getting done along those lines. And you'll see the SLA will start to move and change. And then we can see from here, this response target will say we've met it because I've taken ownership, and our resolution target is on pause because we're waiting for that customer to get back with us along those lines. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Actually, before we do that, let's just take a quick pause and see if we have any questions around what we've covered in the self-service and incidents so far. So Lisa, Larry, do we have any questions to this point? I take that as a no. So let's go ahead and continue on. All right. So we've got the service request is kind of the next section that we want to look at from here. You will be able to see, here's that new employee setup. We can go through and see, here's a computer request from the product catalog. I can go through and look at this computer request for a product catalog. It's got an approval. That approval is pending. We're waiting for that manager or that person to approve that. We can actually go in and see, hey, yes, it was assigned to Alan Taylor, and Alan is the one that we need to go through and log in to be able to approve this or have Alan approve that. Now, we could also have things that would go through and do, if Alan's out of the office, it could escalate that to somebody else. Alan could set a delegate along those lines, some of that kind of structure from here. And then as that task or approval gets done, we would see tasks that would get assigned for people to fulfill that particular request along those lines. Let's go through and look at also this new employee setup from here, right? Here's that new employee setup that was submitted, and we can come through and see, hey, wait a minute, where is this SLA, or where are all of these task structures against this? Where did all of these come from? Well, all of these came from the request offering that is driving this. So everything that we saw in that catalog that was seen before, we can go through and look at, here's all of those different components. So let's just take a new tablet, right? Here is the request a mobile device from the product catalog. And here's that form with all of the information that's being asked along those lines with that detail. And we can go through and see all of that from here. But here's also the workflow that's being set behind the scenes along those lines. Hey, go out, and is it a mobile device? Do we have it in inventory? Who's going to approve the product catalog if it's not there? Who's going to approve it by the manager structure? All of those different things would be part of this workflow as we go through and set this, allocating the asset and updating the received inventory and different stuff. All of that is going to be the workflow that's behind each one of these request offerings. And then you're going to see who can receive that or see that request offering and who could edit that request offering as well. So anyone in my organization and any location would be able to both request it and be able to edit it, giving the right roles within the platform as well. So let's go to that new employee setup one as well. And let's walk through that really quickly, because here, that new employee setup allows us to go through and start to see, again, here's the form where we walk through things like, hey, that start date. Remember that we had a minimum 2-week lead time required. So I can come through and it says, hey, we have a bound, this lower bound that says it has to be greater than or equal to current date plus 14 days, right? Well, also in that list was what they need a computer. Well, from that computer type, you'll see that we have a list of things that can be added. Now, this can be a one-time list. If it's something like notebook or desktop and notebook, whatever it is that you see here, or let's even just say that we wanted, a workstation, and I could add that and say that workstation would be $2,500, not $25,000, $2,500, right? And then I can even put an image that's linked against that if I wanted to go through and do that from here. I'll just grab that one, right? Now you can go through and manage that structure here. You could add additional ones. You can also use what's called the validation list on the back end. So if it's something like cost center or department or location or country or state or any of those things, you would want to be able to go through and use that validation list so you could build it once on the back end and not have to build it every time you do add it to a request offering component. And then you have, again, that workflow. Now this one's a little bit more simplistic than the last workflow that we look at. Here you see it's just created one for operations, one for facilities, one for IT, one for telecom. If I needed to get an approval, I could easily just drag that in. Let's go ahead and link that approval up. And then I would go configure what needs to be done in that approval. Who's going to approve it? Is it a user from a group? Is it a user that the requester is going to select as part of that request offering? Is it a user related to that employee, like their manager? Or can I actually go through and even restrict that the person who's requesting it can't be the approver on those? And so I have all of that kind of information where I can go through and do that approval structure. And then we can even do things like task sequencing in here. Or if I wanted to go and connect out to some third-party tool, I could open up a web service. So I can say, from this perspective, let's go through and grab this and we'll link that over here. And as soon as that task is completed, we'll go through and do that task. And when this task is completed, go out and call to some web service to do something with a third-party application or along those lines. So very easy to configure. I can come through here and edit one of these, and you can see all of the kind of details along those lines for that request offering to be able to work through from there. And then you can see, again, who this is published to. Anyone can edit, anyone can submit it, cancel it, and then who actually can go through and copy or edit the actual offering itself to be able to work through that. So the service requests, a big piece to this where we can go through and see all of these offerings. Now, important to understand, if I come through, right, and clear out that search, right, I've got 7 pages of offerings that come out of the box. Now, I don't want to call those as any one of those is going to be applicable to your business straight out of the box, but it's a good starting point. You've got 7 pages of different offerings that will help you get started into your catalog and what that looks like, and kind of working through from them. And some of them are quite good at what they come out of the box, right? Obviously, a new employee offering, you're not going to be able to do just 4 tasks and have very simple workflow along those lines. But that tablet request, that's a very good one to start with and kind of work and manage associated with that past just the out of the box. So lots of good capability right there to be able to work with from the request perspective. So let's finish out today with our change, CMDB, and release. Now, I'm not going to go through an entire change and build all of that out because we just don't have time to kind of manage that entire process and work that through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a change that I have already submitted in a previous demo. So here you can see this was an ERP upgrade. We're going to start to see some information about being able to go through and see, what type of change it is, what's the impact, what's the risk. You'll notice that we have a risk calculator here. So this risk calculator allows me to go through and set values, and I can even determine what I want in that risk calculator. So if I come in here and look at that risk score, I can define each of those risk questions. I can define the answers and what the weighting is to define what level of risk that particular change is going to drive, right? And then I'm back here, I'm going to go through and start to see things like, when are we going to vote on it? When's the expiration of that vote going to be? When are we going to meet on it? And then what's the start and end date of the actual change along those lines? Now, this start and end date of the actual change, that's going to be driven by the change schedule. And you'll see that I've got 3 CIs allocated to this particular change. And you can see where I've got maintenance windows and where I've got lockout windows to that. And I can actually go to any one of those CIs by simply coming over here and saying, let's hit go to. And that will take me to that full CMDB record. In this case, this CI is an enterprise application called ERP. And then I would be able to see within that structure, hey, what's the history of this particular CI? What's its incident history? What's its problem history? In this case, much more along this is going to be what's its change history along those. What's the maintenance window as to when we can do changes? What's the lockout window as to when we can't do changes along this? And then you'll see we have an enterprise map. This is going to allow us to see what the relationship between the CIs are, and we can go through and visualize that with our service delivery map. You can see here, I've got all of the information along those lines, and I can go through and even jump down to additional levels. If I wanted to go through and say, hey, let's look at this particular ERP server 2, I can jump directly into that CI record and be able to see the structures. Here's that server. Here's the information associated with that. Here's the problem details. Here's, again, those change records, maintenance windows, all of that kind of stuff along those lines. And then if we jump back here to our change.
Hey, Bryan.
Yes.
We got a question in that says, where are these devices being discovered from?
That there is no single place that these devices are being discovered from. We have discovery tools. We integrate with other discovery tools. So you can get it from Ivanti, you can get it from SCCM. SolarWinds is a bad word anymore. I just can't bring it out of my brain to be able to say it. But all of the different tools that are out there, we're going to be able to go through and get that and consolidate or federate that data into the CMDB to go through and find each of those pieces. Okay. The last thing I wanted to show on, well, there's two things I wanted to show. I've got an approval, so we can see the approval and we can see when the voting happened for the approval and who approved it along those paths. And I can define a percentage of people that would vote and approve that based upon any structure. And then you would also see that we have a full change calendar that we would be able to see all of our changes and all of the different configuration, what types of changes. Let's go to a month view so we can see a little bit more along those lines. So you'd be able to see what changes are we working through and other different configuration along those lines. And then change can also relate, and you'll see, oops, I want to go back here. Change can also relate to a release. And a release is where you get into what's our testing plan, what's our rollout plan, what's our backout plan, a lot of that kind of stuff from an ITIL perspective. Now, some customers don't want to do that, and that's great. You can totally do change without release, but you can even get in here and have release that goes through and has very advanced structures, including, here's our milestones, and then even what's the schedule with tasks that are assigned to teams and different things along those lines. So again, super fast. We wanted to keep this to, 45 minutes or so to be able to do this webinar. We can certainly spend a lot more time in each of these modules for anyone who's interested to see that as we kind of move forward from here.
Yeah, that was a great kind of quick overview of what's in the platform. Know that there's lots of more intricacies in there. If you like what you see, we're more than happy to schedule a one-on-one and kind of walk you through what that looks like. There's so much that sometimes those are 2 or 3 hours because we want to get into the very, very specific nuance to your use cases. We wanted to just foster the idea of all the different stuff we can do. Almost everyone customizes it. Your business needs are different than the next organization's business needs. So
I'm going to get a ruler and I'm going to smack your knuckles every time you say the word customize.
Customize. It's not customize. What is it, Brian?
Configuration, right? We're using the built-in components in there. We're not writing code. It's a low-code environment where we're not building out code, doing any of that kind of stuff. It's all configuration.
Yep. No, that's a great way to put it. So
we have another question. Do the HR and or facilities service modules, do those costs, are those additional costs, or do those come with your base?
Yeah. So funny, those are free content packs that you can download from the Ivanti marketplace. So every customer who is an Ivanti customer is entitled to the security operations module, the facilities module, and the HR module. I will say, if you're going to do the facilities module specifically, you want to have the asset management level of the platform, because a lot of facilities management is managing facilities assets.
Yeah, and so it's great that we're not going to charge extra for those. And then also for approvers, we don't want to charge for, just sending an email to a manager and saying, do you approve of anything? Someone accessing a folder, or they want to increase mailbox size, whatever that workflow is. If we need to ask for an approver, we don't have to charge an extra license for that approver. So we're not like a lot of the other ITSM systems that, try and nickel and dime you when it comes to things like that.
And then is this cloud solution or on-premise?
I'm going to say cloud. The answer to that is yes, but we want all of our customers on cloud. There's so many advantages to that. Not only does Ivanti responsible to upgrade the platform and keep all of that moving forward, right, on their schedule and the way they do that, but there's also features that are only available to cloud customers because of the Neuron integration and some of the platform that we didn't discuss that's here. But if you can do cloud, we want you to do cloud very much.
Yeah, but if there is some kind of security requirement or anything like that, we can fall back to on-premise, but we definitely want to steer you to cloud first. So Any other questions?
There is a question about what a typical deployment looks like. I think that's a great one to ask.
Yeah,
Mr.
so that very much depends on a lot of things, right? A traditional ITSM implementation, if you were to talk to somebody 5 years ago, it would be talking about going through and sitting down and working through defined business requirements and workshops for weeks to months with some customers, and going through and configuring the tool to their business everywhere you go, along those lines. We can still do those, and those tend to run in a longer environment, maybe a 4 to 6 month arrangement to go through and do all of that. Or we can move into a much more streamlined method, which more and more customers are choosing these days, which is focused around ITIL best practices, which is focused around the Ivanti out of the box, which allows us to streamline that process and get it down into the, 1 to 2 weeks for an incident only customer, to maybe 2 to 3 to 4 months for a customer who wants all of the different platform and all the different request offerings and all of that kind of stuff. So, it all kind of depends. We define that with you and how you guys want to see the platform configured in your environment.
And, some customers choose small pieces. Hey, but let's start with just incident, self-service, and knowledge, and, bite size, easy to consume, get it up and going right away. And then other customers, it's a much more bigger project. We're trying to replace ServiceNow, and we need to do everything soup to nuts in 6 months, and everything in between. So that's a big part of what NCSI does, is sit down with you and understand the business drivers behind it, and try and make sure that we can adapt to that. We have a great large deployment team that's been doing this for many, many years, and can help you get from not just what the product looks like out of the box, but what you think it should look like to help with your business in the long run. So.
Okay.
And someone did ask, what if we wanted to start with our HR team and not necessarily start with IT?
Great, not a problem.
Okay.
Totally do that.
Yep, or facilities or whatever. We don't have to start with ITSM. That's just that's a common place to start, but wherever you want. Okay, any more questions, Lisa?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, and I apologize.
Okay.
I didn't introduce Lisa. That's Lisa Rowe that you're hearing. She's on our service management team as well. So one of the great people that we have to help you realize kind of what you've seen today, and see how it can help solve some of your challenges. So Bryan Hoskins, thanks for giving us a walk through the tool today. I appreciate that.
Thank you, everyone.
If you have any specific desires to kind of see one-on-one, know more information, understand about pricing, anything like that, we're going to reach out to you, or you can even talk to your NCSI salesperson, or even just email sales@ncsi.us. We're more than happy to extend this and have a more one-on-one. We also recorded it. We're going to put it on our YouTube page. There you're going to see things like our asset webinar that we did last week, other things inside the Ivanti portfolio. So keep an eye on that if you want to know more about the platform. So otherwise, thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.